Precise something. What's up, buddy?
Nothing much, just hanging out inside,
Yeah.
trying to
Really?
trying to have a great time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Are you still in the same place that I saw you last?
No, actually, I'm in a new place, fairly close by to where you saw me last. Probably
Okay.
just like 7 minutes east of downtown Nashville, and
Man, I'm
yeah,
missing it this year, buddy. Like
yeah.
we're usually there for like last year was like 6 or 7 weeks. The year before was like 4 weeks. We've been going on there for like 6 years, and it's like I need like a mountain fix like now. And we were about to go down like 2 days before quarantine dropped, and
Oh man.
well, not before quarantine, before like as people were kind of like deciding whether or not to like be canceling their trips and whatnot, we made an early decision to cancel our trip. And
Mhm.
quarantine dropped while we were there, and I was like really grateful that we had canceled it. But I
Yeah.
usually get my fix around that time, and it did not happen. There's
Uh,
some tea calling my name at Dobra. There's
oh yeah.
some food calling my name, some mountain views calling my name. But you know, we'll all be absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? We'll all kind of need an excuse to hang out after this all thing wraps up.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, which I don't know when that's going to happen. We'll have to see.
Yeah,
Life is certainly changing.
yeah. Are you doing anything to like keep yourself occupied creatively? Are you doing anything to like kind of keep your edge? Or like what are you doing right now?
Yeah, I've been shooting a ton of film actually. So like
Cool.
I've picked up some film cameras and um, probably spending way too much money on rolls of film. So
For sure.
I don't know. Uh, Other than that, it's been just kind of like trying to just be all right with a new rhythm of
For
things.
sure.
I'm an extroverted person, so I get a lot of energy from being around people. So
Hmm.
those of my friends who know me pretty well can attest to that. And
Hmm.
yeah, so like I have a great time when I'm in groups, but it's actually been kind of good. I've been in a phase of like learning to appreciate my own company and just kind of like a slower pace, um,
Yeah.
which is all kind of new for me. But you can still go outside. You can go hiking in some more remote places if that's something that you have access to. Um,
Yeah.
Thankfully, I do living here, which is great.
Yeah, we're in the same boat here. All the national parks, national lake shores were closed down, obviously. So we don't have access to those. And unfortunately, a lot of the really beautiful places here are federally operated. So unfortunately, a lot of the best hikes are kind of closed down for the time being. But Asheville and Traverse City are pretty similar in spirit. You guys are a lot bigger, but I mean, there's a reason that we were drawn to both of these places, and like I can go. I have this theory. I call it the zombie apocalypse theory, which is very apropos right now. I was living in Chicago at the time when I came up with this, and the idea is if any given moment some sort of catastrophic disaster happens, like how long will it take me to get into the woods with a backpack full of food, where I
Dude, I do
like
that all the time.
and nowhere near anybody where like the zombies can't get me. And living in Chicago, I was at the bus stop thinking of this, and I'm just like, it's just not going to happen. Like I am one of the masses that does not survive. But I feel like both Asheville, depending on where you live, and Traverse City, definitely within like 15 minutes, maybe on foot, I can get to like the trees and build like a little base camp like up in the trees where nobody can find me.
Yeah, I know it's really wouldn't be hard. Although like right now, this is about the lamest zombie apocalypse you can have. It's like all of
Yeah,
the effects of an apocalypse, just no zombies.
and much slower, and like there's a lot more like 24-hour news, I feel like.
Yeah, yeah,
I have been on some hikes around here, and it doesn't feel that dissimilar from the zombie apocalypse, because you're like with your little huddle, you're like with the people around you, and you're like, I see humans over there. Am I gonna like? I'm not gonna contract that, so I'm gonna step off the trail like 15 feet, let them pass. I know I feel like I'm creeping through the forest like you would in the zombie apocalypse, but yeah, instead
yeah,
of uh, zombies, it's just like some dude that you see at the bakery sometimes.
yeah, yeah.
All right, man.
That's
Well,
great.
before we dig into like actual like questions, can you give those who don't know you a bit of a like an overview on who you are, what you do, just kind of like give us your like your little baby elevator pitch?
Yeah. So my name is Alex.
Sorry, I'm gonna
Lefler.
interrupt you. I'm gonna interrupt you real quick
Okay.
and say I'm gonna do a screen share on your Instagram feed
Oh,
as you're
okay.
talking.
Oh, wow. Great.
I know, fancy, right?
Yeah.
All right, go for it.
Yeah. So my name is Alex Lefler. I am a wedding photographer and a designer as well. And I've been shooting weddings locally wherever I've lived and in some very weird places in the world over the past, what's almost a decade now. And
Mhm.
I have I loved it when I started, and I still love to do it now. Although the way that I think about it has changed over the years, and I I get a lot of joy out of just making stuff, and it's just been something that's a constant for me, and I hope to continue to do it and evolve as time goes on. But yeah, that's kind of that. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, so I'm a little bit used to the hilly geography. Um, but now I live in Asheville, and the mountains are where it's at. So uh,
Agreed.
yeah, but if I also had a second place to live in the Southwest desert, I wouldn't be mad about that.
So when you say your thinking on this has evolved, what does that mean specifically?
Yeah, well, I think I just don't really. um, I think early on I cared a lot about like making something that fit a very particular mold, and those were kind of like earlier days in wedding photography when most of the wedding photography out there was a little more uh, I guess you could call it a little more cookie cut.
Yeah.
There were less
Oof.
people doing things that were outside of the norm. So there were only a few who were doing it at the time who stood out. And I remember when I first started, I was like, I just want to be like them. That's all I want to do. I want to do it just like that. And
Yep.
uh, and I think that sort of helped a little bit because it I guess in a way I was looking up to some really talented people, which kind of helped my own skills, I guess. But my mentality around it was to just basically do what they did. And I think after a while, I sort of got bored with that. Um,
Hmm.
and now I think I would say that like I almost don't think about what other people are doing. And I try my very best to like create from a pretty base level spot of who I am as a person, and trying to uh, make stuff that's reflective of that from the very beginning. So and all of the stuff that I'm inspired by, even outside of photography.
Hmm.
So yeah, my thinking I think has changed to just be I think a little bit more honest to myself, not just with what I create, but like where I create it from.
Yeah. No, that's so fascinating. So my background, and I've talked about this quite a bit already, so I won't dig in too deep on this, but like my background comes from the fine art world. I was in art school as a studio photographer, or sorry, a studio artist focusing on photography. So I was doing like painting, drawing, sculpture work, and so I come from the like call it like the hyper creative side of this thing. Like that the intention was always to just like make interesting things. And man, I have such a double-edged sword, I'm of two minds on the, being inspired by other people. I go through phases where like I don't want to even look at any other work. I don't even want to see anything anybody else does because I do not want to be influenced by them. I want to like purely create something that comes from me. And selfishly, I don't want to have that feeling of like, did I create this or did I just make this up from somebody else? And then I feel really selfish and I feel really insular and I feel really like
Mm-hmm.
uh overly private, maybe is the word for it. And
Mm-hmm.
I go through this glut of just like wanting to soak up like every single bit of inspiration from around me. And to agree with you, um I definitely like try when I go through those, I try not to just be inspired by photographers, and especially not just wedding photographers for our wedding work. Um, Trying to be inspired by all sorts of different kind of creative mediums I can get my hands on. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have ever had that sort of like I don't want to look at everybody else's work, but that's like a
Yeah.
strong thing with me for sure.
Yeah, I think it's hard to like get into a balanced viewpoint with that because like it makes you question like what is original in the first place.
Which the
Can you
answer is
even
there's
create?
nothing original, right?
Yeah, that's my viewpoint as well. I just think that um, yeah, I'm not sure you can create anything that's 100% new. Uh,
Right.
I think the stuff that you're creating from came from stuff that came from other stuff that came from other stuff.
For sure. But I
So
will
yeah,
say
it's just like
on the flip
yeah,
side though, wouldn't you agree though that you can't create anything that's 100% unoriginal either, right?
yeah,
Like nothing is new, but nothing is like completely old either. Like
hmm
even though like, you know, we talked on the last call, we talked about iterating on a concept, and like
hmm
I paused on your like hands holding over the eclipse, which was one of the most incredible photos of last year for sure for me. Like, god damn,
thank you,
that's just a cool set.
thank
um
you.
I'm gonna put that in the show notes. I gotta make sure that that gets linked. The eclipse session. um but even, you know, so we were talking about iterating on a concept, and you know, you can you know, try the same thing over and over again, and you have to really get good at one specific aesthetic or one specific like we'll call it like a trick. I really like that term, but you know, you try these tricks of, you know, hand holding, or you know, I carry like these tiny little mirrors around with me and stuff like that. um, but every single time you do it, it's not an original photo, but it's the first time that couple has ever gotten married on that cliff, on that beach, at that venue, and you've tried that thing with them, and to them it means the world because you're like experimenting and doing something creative and beautiful for them. And so, you know, I guess at
Mhm.
the end of the day, the answer is just like, just make some shit and don't stress about it, right?
Yeah, and also like people create for different reasons, and I think with different bents on it. Like a lot of people are very service oriented in the way that they shoot, and they're not trying to like break revolutionary ground with every single shot that they make, but they're just trying to be, um, honest about what they're seeing and like shooting things for what they are. And then there's people who live on the extreme other end, which a lot of people don't want to take a photo unless it's going to be something that to them is like this giant meaningful thing, which is also
Yeah.
fine. But there's like different ways that you can approach the same sort of shoot, and I think that's really cool. And that's what a market is, like there's people that like make stuff in different ways, and then if a a client comes along and likes it, then they pay for it. And I think that that's cool. I think that's a good thing.
I have talked about this term a lot, and I'm going to 100. I wrote it down. I'm going to steal it. You can still keep it, but it is now also mine. Service oriented in their craft, I think, is like the best descriptor I've heard for that. That does not make it sound like somebody is just like not good enough to be the artist version of our craft,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I know in my own language, I've had a hard time describing, because I tend to be in the opposite camp where maybe too far to the extreme. I tend to obsess over like the creativity of it and the feeling of it. But yeah, there's definitely that positive to just being like, I just want to take good pictures of people, and they will love them, and then they will pay me for them. That's just the
Yeah,
service, and I don't think that's a
yeah,
negative, but I tend to think of it too mushy, you know.
yeah. And like, it's at the end of the day, like people value what they pay for, and they pay for what they value. And um,
Yeah.
I've got some friends who kind of poke fun at me a little bit because I say this all the time, but I think that there's a very big pie, and when it comes to running a business, when people are being really, I guess, honest about the way that they want to shoot and the way that they want to create, um, there is a slice of the pie for everybody, and it's a really big
Hmm.
slice. I think what happens is people get into a rut of trying, like, I'm trying to say this right. People, oftentimes I see they're trying too hard to be something instead of just being something. Um, and that, like, I've noticed that, especially with like photography trends and things that are cool in the moment. There's nothing wrong with that, but I've noticed over the years that those like ebbs and flows have gotten stronger, and
Mm.
the attraction on things that are trendy tend to bulk up really big, and then a lot of times things just sort of get homogenous and becomes kind of one thing.
Oh yeah,
Um,
for sure.
yeah, and I think that again, that's totally cool, but maybe like philosophically speaking, I think it might be better, and it would make a photography market a lot more diversified and interesting if people kind of tapped into some of that honesty of what they actually want to make, and why they
I
want to
love
make it.
that. I
Yeah.
love that. We've talked a few times about um, what has become, or what starts as revolution becomes an established norm. And I think there is something about that where, you were looking back, and I think you and I got started about the same time. I was less
Mhm.
aware, being in a small town in northern Michigan, I was less aware of like the broader photo industry and the broader, like, all of these interesting people that were doing interesting
Mhm.
things. And so I was just
Yeah.
like, I have a camera. Actually, this is the camera, this battered ass camera. I have a camera. Will someone
That's
pay me to
awesome.
use it? Like, that was
Yeah.
what I was striving for. But
Yeah.
the things that when we were getting started were like mind-blowingly revolutionary are now like one of those pies, one of those
Yeah.
sections of those pies where, like, to us it was like, oh my God, photography can be this thing. Yes, I want to do nothing but that. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden you're like, oh cool, yeah, that's just called looks like film.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's a whole world.
Yeah, for sure. So Emily had a question.
Well, I was just going to say, when I met Brooke, I met her before I met Michael. I remember looking at their work and seeing people in a like pushed up against a tree.
Mm,
And I
Yeah.
remember looking at that and just like staring at these people in foliage and thinking, wait, there's another person in a tree. And it was just so basic and so pure and simple. And I remember like thinking, oh, like this is one thing they do, and it's consistent and it's lovely and it's easy to look at.
mm.
And it's so funny because that, I look at Alex's work and I'm like, oh, I don't even know how he made that stuff. Like what is he doing? He's, um, and then, and then there's like just an easy photo that I can appreciate just as much. And,
Interesting.
and anyway, I was just going to say, Michael, thank you for your tree photos of people.
Yeah.
It's
that
inspiring.
was that was one of the first things that I really obsessed over, was foliage and like dark, rich greens. I don't know plants very well, but I know what I like now, and I have like my own names for plants. I should probably become a plant biologist, but I have things like, there's the sawtooth plant, there's that big banana-looking thing. Those are the things that I look for when we're shooting, and yeah, there is something about that simplicity that I know. I think I know the exact image you're talking about, because there was some that um was a phase when I was like obsessively trying to like break down uh the frame into just like simple pieces, and uh not complicate things, not think of them as photographs, but think of them as like um almost paintings, like almost just like design.
Mhm.
But we should stop talking about me, because I will talk about myself this entire time, and I'm here every time. And I always say I don't want to make this the Michael Kent show. This is Alex's game today. But
Nah,
Emily, thank
it's
you.
good.
You're a very nice human being. All right. Um, so one of the things that I wrote down to talk about was um, Alex. Can you talk real quick, because it's still looking at Emily.
Oh
I
yeah.
want you to be
Yeah.
here. Hello. Um,
Hello.
so what in your work I see this like uh, this textural nature. I see this like obsession with, well, first of all, your lighting is just always on point, but
Thank you.
there's this like adventure quality to them, even when they're just in somebody's home. And I was
Mhm.
curious if you had like, did the interest in photography come before the interest in this travel or this like adventure vibe, or did you start traveling and realize that you could take pictures? Like, which of these came first for you?
That's a great question. I think I think the maybe I'll answer it kind of from the side. I
Answer this
think
any
I
way you want. I don't care.
yeah, yeah. I think maybe what that comes from is I did a lot of fine art before I did photography.
Mm,
And when I did fine art, I was really interested in nature and landscapes and just natural organic stuff and the geometry of nature and how things how shapes just naturally happen out in the world. And I remember when I realized I could kind of like replicate some of those things or capture some of those things with photography, I think I just brought it from that. Thinking back, like I think my mentality has just carried that from an early age. So I think along with like travel and adventure and all of that stuff, I almost think of like my like joy that I get from traveling and going to new places and photographing those things. It's almost just like I don't like being bored, and I like to experience new things, not just for the novelty, but because I really enjoy absorbing new experiences and new cultures and new people. And so I almost think of that as like a separate thing from the way that I photograph things, if that makes sense.
When you say your art, you did fine art stuff. What does that look like? What medium were you talking about?
I did a lot of acrylic and some watercolor. Definitely would draw a lot.
Interesting.
And would just like paint a lot of, and this, so when I say like early on, I mean like when I was, oh gosh, like 8, 9, 10 years old is when I started.
So there isn't
a
portfolio that I can beg you to share with us. It's like literally like your childhood paintings and stuff like that.
Yeah, the stuff that my mom still has hanging up in the house. Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
You should do a show.
Yeah, just like a Facebook Live at my parents' house. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Do you know who Andy Goldsworthy is?
That sounds really familiar.
I'm gonna put a actually I can just share my screen again because we have technology. So yeah, like I said, I studied fine arts for like 5 years in undergrad. Andy Goldsworthy, I think, is somebody you would really dig. He does these really beautiful sculptural installations, but they are just literally out in nature. And he's like one of the greats now. You know, when I was in art school, he was like kind of one of the new guys on the scene, but he's now like the guy. And these are all photographed by him, but a lot of times they're just left to die. They're just left to rot. Now he does have some big pieces and like the MoMA and stuff like that. There's like permanent installations, but you know, something as stunning as this thing that keeps coming up on the left. It's just him on a hike, putting leaves together. Honestly, and in some ways, they're kind of like proto Pinterest posts or like you know, shareable memes. But this was before anybody else was doing this kind of stuff. And he would just photograph them, and they're just absolutely stunning. Like, this is just a bunch of stones on a beach put together, and a print of this is like absolutely expensive, like really? On the order of like you know, any number of renowned artists.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, stunning. I love that stuff. Yeah, I love that it was also done kind of before I could see this being done for gimmicky reasons on Pinterest, for sure.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like the first person to do it kind of can claim fine art, and then everybody else, because it didn't come from a place. And maybe this is just my you know, capital A artist like snootiness speaking, but like because it came from a place of purity or just pure creation, he can claim it as like, oh, I'm a famous artist who gets to do this for a living now, and everybody else who does it is just like crafting. I don't know. It's not fair, but it's stunning regardless of what it is.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. It's really cool.
Yeah, I'll make sure that gets tossed in the show notes because Andy. So from this, you know, this adventure vibe, this like travel-based photography, I also know you as like that dude behind Ramble. Do you want to talk a little bit about what Ramble is to everybody?
Yeah. For sure. It's a super cool thing that actually my friends Ben and Madison, who are here on this call, we actually came up with this idea that I had done a lot of workshops before, and by a lot I mean a few. And I was like, I know that there were like a lot of workshops out there for photographers and creative people specifically. And there was a moment where I think Ben and I were having a conversation, and we were like, well, what if there was like something else? Like, what if, what do we like? And then we were like, well, we like to camp. We like to be outside, like literally camping on the ground. and we had a moment where we were like, oh, well, like, what if we just have a bunch of, there's the website. What if we actually just like have a bunch of photographers or creative folks get together and camp and have some lightly structured education, but have it not necessarily lean super heavy into that. But you would get that out of it. So it's this kind of hybrid thing that we wanted to do. And there were a lot of workshops that were, I guess, camping themed is almost the way I would put it. That were
I've been to
already
some
in
of those.
existence. Yeah. And it's like and that's totally cool. And that is a thing too. But what we wanted to create was something that was like mostly just a camping trip.
I love
So
that.
when we just decided to do it, and the first one was out in near Phoenix, Arizona, in the Superstition Mountains, and it was awesome. And it was this kind of like messy first inaugural experience, and it was a whole lot of fun. And then we did it
You
again.
mean it wasn't perfect the first time?
Oh yeah, no, not at all. Yeah, no, it was awesome though. We did have like a run in with some javelina, which are like almost like feral hogs out in the
Whoa.
desert. Yeah, and they're really
God,
weird,
those photos
and
would be cool.
they're super. They're just like they're almost like the raccoons of pigs. They just like get it. They like
I
they
love that
just
so
get
much.
they just like get into stuff. And we woke up at and like it was like 2 a.m. and one of my other friends, different Ben, he woke up and he was like, "Psst,
This Ben.
psst. We've got pigs." And I was just like in my sleeping attire, and I was in the middle of the desert, and we found that pigs were getting into all the ramen noodles.
Oh my
So
God.
it was a pretty weird experience, but we had a ton of fun doing it. We did it again out here near Asheville on a piece of private land up at
Hmm.
about 5,000 or 6,000 feet. And that was pretty incredible. And I just can't I can't speak highly enough about it, not because it's something that like I helped create, but because it really is kind of a unique experience for people. And I've had a ton of fun doing it. So
I assume this is kind of
that's
on
plug.
hold for the time being with all
Yeah.
the COVID stuff
So
going on.
yeah, totally. So we were going to do one in the fall, and if things continue, I guess, to trend in a negative direction, we would have to either postpone or get creative with that.
For sure.
But if things do improve, we do still want to do something, and
Yeah.
so it's kind of a tentative this fall sort of deal. And I would, don't get me wrong, I'd love to do it. But yeah, we're just kind of waiting to see how things play out, and we may have some. We're trying to like theorize ways to make that easier and more accessible to people.
For
Anyway.
sure. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine a ramble camping backpacking Zoom call session would work, if only
No,
because it's like not going to be great Wi-Fi wherever everybody goes.
correct. Yeah, yeah.
Just first camping workshops doesn't work. Doesn't
No,
work.
no. At least not yet. We haven't come up with good enough augmented reality for that.
Oh, man, do not get me talking on augmented reality and virtual reality because I have so much to talk about there. Oh man.
I'll go there with you.
Okay. So one of the things that comes up a lot on here is we've met with a bunch of people who do a bunch of van life or traveling. Josh Hartman, who's originally from the Asheville area as well,
Hmm.
travels in a scamper right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know Kim Butler out of Washington area, but
Hmm.
she just sold her house and bought this like badass Sprinter van, had it kitted out. You seem to have really like, I don't want to say cornered the market, or yeah, cornered the market on this like inverse of that, where you have this like home base, but yet you are still, every time I talk to you, I feel like, except for now, you tend to be like
Yeah.
in a different corner of the universe.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious if that was intentional, or if it's because that like having that home base is really valuable to you, or you just don't have a van yet, or
It's all of the above. Well, first off, I'd love to have a van. That'd be amazing. But speaking more to like the home base, I think if you had asked me maybe 7 years ago, I would have said like, I don't care about home base.
yeah,
And now I do. I think I do. but only in like the sense of like an anchor. Not that I have to be here all the time, but it's something that is like you can always kind of like boomerang back to, and it's almost like a safety net as far as like maybe it's just that the older I get, the more I like to have something nested. Um, but I really do enjoy it. I will say that in places where I have not enjoyed my surroundings very much, I didn't really have the same feeling. So there
Hmm.
is something, you know how they say that like when you move somewhere because you're unhappy, um, that will just follow you to wherever you're going.
Yeah.
I think that is true to a degree, but at the same time, when I have moved, um, for whatever reason, it has almost like signaled like new life phases, which have like
Yeah.
filled me with really, really positive energy and stuff. And that has been, I think, what's happened here in Asheville. So when I moved here, it was like, it was almost like a light bulb went on. I was like, oh, okay, I love this. This is amazing. And it still is. So, it's like I said, it's not like I feel the need to just be a homebody here, but when I do find myself at home, it is super gratifying.
Yeah, for sure. I have for years talked about how locations have special energy or special presence, or just in general, like there are there are locations to me that stand above others, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, I tend to draw my life towards those spaces. This is one of them for me. Is Northern Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Mostly in the summer. I'm not so much the snowboarder, skier, cross country skier type of guy. Snowboard or snowshoeing. I don't understand why snowshoeing is a thing. It's like walking in the snow but harder. Um, I grew up skiing and snowboarding and I still love it. But if I could trade my winters for some mountain hiking instead, I would. I do.
Yep. Yeah.
I do
Yes.
when I can. Um, but yeah, I agree. Like I lived in Chicago for a minute, and no knock against Chicago. I love visiting Chicago. I will never ever live in Chicago, and I probably will never live in a city that big again in my
Mm-hmm.
life.
Mm-hmm.
And coming back to, this is my hometown. This is where I grew up, and um, I am I'm very certain that I'm not living here because I was born here.
Mm-hmm.
I have tried living other places, and I was drawn back to the energy of this space. And one of the few other places that I have been uh, enraptured, enthralled with was Asheville, North Carolina, and there's a reason that we
Mm-hmm.
go there very frequently. And yeah, there have been times when I wanted to just like get up and move because I wasn't happy with my situation or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, there's a different energy that I felt moving into the, not just the city, but like the mountains surrounding the people that live there.
Yeah.
There's some magic down there for sure.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I can totally see that. I love Traverse City too. I don't get up to Northern Michigan often enough.
Right. You've been, I seem to remember you shot up in like in the dunes or something like that, or you shot in the Upper Peninsula or something.
Yeah. Uh, I've shot in Michigan, like southern and central, quite a lot. But I haven't. I think I've maybe done like one or two sessions
Gotcha.
up in northern. But no, I have been in the UP. The UP, is that how
Yeah.
Michigan people say it? Okay,
The
cool.
UP.
Yeah.
It's not the
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it's, yeah, I've been there and it's awesome, but that was just for fun. That's like that's basically Canada.
Oh yeah, without question. I mean, we're basically Canada to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I forgot that you had been here, because the people that I interview either know where I am just because they've met me, or they've never heard of this place at all. Like this
Yeah.
place is like in so many ways not on photographers' radar, even though we have some of the most stunning views that are not the Pacific Northwest in the
Yeah.
country.
Oh yeah.
If you're ever near Copper Harbor in the UP, get there as soon as you can. Most beautiful place in the world. Yeah, I for sure. It's on my radar right now. A lot. I've been, for whatever reason, maybe it's just been by following so many new photographers with the Photo Club account. I've been seeing a ton of like black rocks and stuff up in Copper Harbor area, and I'm fascinated with the Upper Peninsula. I have spent not nearly enough time there. My sister went to college there, and I got to explore a little bit while she was there, and we as a community just need to like find an excuse to get up there. There's a few people that were in the Traverse City Photo Club, ended up moving up to the Upper Peninsula, and so I'm working on getting a little seed of a community built up there, so we have an excuse to go travel, and they can show us around and give us all the
Oh yeah.
lowdown.
Oh man, I want to see the pictured rocks and all of that. That just
It's
sounds
so
amazing.
stunning.
Yeah.
That's where I grew up going for vacation as a kid. Like my parents didn't have a lot of money, and so we weren't like Cancun, Eastern Europe. We were like, let's get in the car and drive 4 hours north and go to the Pictured Rocks and go to Canada.
Yeah.
So this is a question that I've asked every single person that travels a lot, every single
Mhm.
person that's van life in it or camp life in it or whatever you want to call it. One of the things that's really, really important to me is when I roll into a location, that the location that I have selected for my couples or for my subjects meshes with them, vibes with them, feels in some way like it resonates with who their personality is or who their relationship is. How do you prepare for a session in a location that you either haven't been before or is, maybe you've been there, but it's like fairly new-ish? And is that something that, just answer that first question because I lost the train of thought on the second question.
Yeah. So how do I prepare for shooting in far off places that I've never been to? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so when you say prepare, do you mean prepare like mentally to do it, or how do I make sure that I'm equipped to do a good job?
I think that
What
I think that
angle?
first question is going to be more interesting, so stick to that one.
Yeah. So I think preparing mentally, I just get excited to go somewhere. I'm
Yeah.
already on like level 10 stoked. So like, yeah, like one thing that I do mentally to kind of get into a space where I can, where I'm like ready to do it is I try to like get somewhere like a day or two early. I did this when over these past holidays. I was in Big Sur, California, shooting an elopement, and I think I was there like 2 days early, so I had 2 full days to myself to just drive up and down Highway 1, and which real awful, yeah. But it was like
Terrible.
yeah, and it was just like I was able to get a really really intimate sense of where I was, and I scouted a whole lot, and kind of planned out. What where we would go and kind of how we would do it. And
Are you getting out of the car and like hiking at the time of the shoot is going to be? Are you like get on Google Maps? Like how are you doing that?
Both. So yeah, I will get out. I do a ton of Google Map stuff before I even get there, usually leading up in the weeks prior. And then when I get there, I try to match up when I arrive that it is a similar time of day and lighting. Even if it's not, I just like to know where I am. But I have had scenarios where I haven't had any of those opportunities at all, where I have no ability to prepare and I just show up to something and I do what I can do based on what I see in front of me. So
yeah.
So I have had both experiences, but if I have it my way, I definitely get there with like enough padding and time to explore.
I originally asked this question of, I think it was Kim Butler, because she was, she's been on the road something only like 8 months or 7 months or something like that. And I was curious of her whether one can, because she knows like the Olympic National Park like it's the back of her hand, right? Like that's her home. She is, if Traverse City is the gateway to the Sleeping Bear National Lakeshore, Asheville is the gateway to the Blue Ridge Mountains. Her hometown, Port Angeles, is a gateway to the Olympic National Park. It's an incredible location, and I was curious to see if by being on the road so frequently, it is functionally possible to understand kind of like the soul and the integrity of a location that rapidly. And I'm coming to realize that, having asked this, I think this is the third time I've asked this of somebody, that it's maybe a stupid question, because one of my favorite things is being in a completely different environment that I've never been before and being like, I can do this. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm just going to go walk into this thing. Like I wrote this down, level 10 stoked to be here with this couple and to be here with these people and to be in this new environment. And like, let's walk that way and be crazy inspired. And then by the time that we're done, the sun will probably be down.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like
Yeah.
we're overthinking it. It's just dope to be a photographer.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like I've gone through phases where I've put things down in itineraries and like tried to plan things out. And in
Yeah.
some cases I do that. And it's usually when it is really cramped for time. And that's
Mhm.
probably the only scenario where you'll see me like write a list and with times next to it. But that's kind of it though. And sometimes, actually not even sometimes, most of the time, that stuff still kind of goes awry, and you have to kind of think on your feet and develop the skill set of taking the tools and ingredients that are in front of you and making something out of it.
For sure. I tell my couples, well, maybe I don't tell them this, but I notice that if there's anybody who sends me an itinerary down to the minute, not that we have a problem, but I have to coach them away from stressing to that level. When I see things like, hey, we're thinking like the ceremony is going to be 5-ish, and then we're going to go from there. We'll do pictures right before, right after. We'll do this after that. Like when I see those kind of schedules, that's something that's where I really flourish. That's where I shine. To see them down to the minute, I have to tell my couples straight up front, like, we will do our best, but I've never been to a wedding that's on time. Like it just has not happened. And so I'm not going to be there at 12:03 to hit that mark. Like it's probably going to get done 5 minutes early. And then the next thing's going to be done 3 minutes late. And we're just, the joke that I love telling it, I've said this at every single wedding. They're not going to do it without you. Like you're getting married today. Like it's not going to happen without you. Like they're going to wait for you. We'll be fine. We're going to have a good time.
It's not like the other person is going to get married to air. Like it's not going to, just like they're the only one standing there. Just like, yes, I do. Yeah.
Hey, I was there on time. I said my part. You need to get over there and do your part. I'm going to go dance by myself.
Yeah. Doesn't work like that.
So do you prepare your couples in any way for these like, I mean, assuming you let them know if there's going to be like a 3-hour hike in front of them before they get there?
Yeah, of course. Like if it's something that I'm initiating that is going to take a bit of effort or require prep on their part, I totally inform them of what to expect. Sometimes though, I take the back seat on this stuff because some couples are way more ahead of it than like I am, as far as like how adventurous they want to be. So, and sometimes they lead the way, and I just kind of take a little bit more of a fly on the wall approach and just kind of document what they are doing.
So
as opposed to me just like crafting something for them to do and then prepping them for it. Sometimes it's the other way around.
I think that's definitely, like, you are obviously in a great position. Somebody who's listening right now and says, but I want to go to this dope peak mountaintop that is a 45-minute hike and my couples don't own hiking shoes. Like there is definitely some prep work that needs to be done ahead of time that you have done specifically with your branding and your marketing that draws these people into you, that says, hey, if you are planning to bring hiking boots to your wedding, you're going to find my website. You're going to find my Instagram. And I think that, can you speak a little bit about, maybe blend that a little bit with like, so we've touched a little bit on how, you found photography through these epic people back in the day, these monolithic, megalithic characters. Can you talk a little bit about how you found your style both as a photographer and how you kind of developed this idea of, or this brand of being, an adventure photographer, I guess is the word for it.
Totally. Yeah. So I think, like I said early on, it was just because I wanted to be like somebody. And I think, like I said, that sort of got like threw the ball pretty far. And then I just got kind of bored of doing things almost like verbatim what I saw, and started thinking, and I'll try to articulate this as what best I can, started trying to think of storytelling as a word, as being a much broader idea. And so I think what I mean by that is like storytelling isn't it's not just like the images in the order that you present them, and then like the like the headline on your website, or like, you know, that sort of stuff. It's actually not just that stuff. It's like your bio, your captions, your email signature, your the way that you speak to people, and like all of the tiny details that you can sort of infuse your own character into. And so I think when I started realizing that I have control over that for myself, it almost like kind of carved out the sort of person that would land there and say, yes, I found it. I found what I was looking for. Because I wasn't really trying to pander to them. I was just saying like, well, here's what I'm into. And you can tell just even by the way that I construct every sentence on my website, because that's just coming from that place. So it's like infusing every bit of it with that line of thinking, and thinking of storytelling as a much bigger thing than just like the images themselves. If that
That's
makes
so
sense.
beautiful, because on a crass level, if you took that concept to like a Madison Avenue marketing agency, they would be like, yeah, duh, that's just your brand, bruh. Like
Yeah.
that's just like, you gotta speak the words that your clients want to hear. But to invert that and supplant that idea, you have
Mm-hmm.
taken the idea of marketing and just said, I'm just going to, I think you use the word infuse, like infuse who I am through that entire thing. And to take that and to, I mean, that's such a beautiful idea. Then you don't have to do any work
Yeah. Well,
on
and it's like,
on your brand, right? Because just
yeah,
you.
it's yeah. So like, I think I would even clarify it even further, where it's not so much that my brand is me. It's actually that it's not me, and I get to
Mm,
make it what I want it to be. So I have as much creative exercise and control over that as I would the images that I make. I can say what I want about myself the way that I want about myself.
can you say,
And
I'm
yeah,
I'm not certain on that one, on that line. You said
yeah,
it's, my brand is not me. So
yeah,
what do you mean by my brand is not me? Is it just that it's a literal separate entity?
yeah. It's
Because
because
you're
it's,
not Alex Lefler photography, you mean?
yeah, like I am myself, but like this thing that I'm making isn't me. It's a creation of mine.
Mm,
It's an extension, but it can be what
interesting.
I want it to be, and I have a lot more power over that than, it's not as narrow as saying, well, as long as you're authentic to yourself, then it will come out right. The
Right.
thing is, like, yeah, there's you can you can be as creative with it, and expressive in ways that maybe you didn't feel the permission to do so because it didn't feel perfectly authentic to how you would speak in a conversation with somebody. You can be as wacky or as not as like somber or whatever. The whole point is, I think it's like a playground that is like
Yeah.
free to play with, that I would love to see more people playing with it.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So the takeaway, I'm gonna, tell me if this makes sense. I wrote down, not me, but infused with me.
Hmm.
Does that feel right?
Yeah, I think so. I just think it's important to not totally self-identify with the brand itself and be like, that thing is me. It's actually some other different thing. It's actually
Yeah.
not, it isn't a total reflection of your identity as a whole. It's like a thing you can play with, and I think that
Right.
that's important to remember. Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about identity a lot on here. How so many of us identify like as a photographer, and I think there's like, I mean, there's a whole mess of psychology tied to that, and a mess of like
Hmm.
our self-worth being tied up in what we do and who we are,
Right.
and how we self-identify. I think, 1,000 New York Times articles have been written about how everybody is a damn photographer because they want some sort of creative epitaph written about them when they die, that, loving father, kind banker, photographer. Like they want that last, that last comma on their epitaph.
Hmm.
And I think there is some healthy, there is some way to healthily to tie it to
Healthily.
you in a healthy way.
Yeah.
But I think it's fascinating how you separate those things, and that's interesting.
Yeah, and it's a little, I don't know, maybe it sounds like very counterculture to the be authentic way of thinking, but it's not that I'm anti-authenticity. It's that I think it's important to maybe a little bit of distance between yourself and the things that you want to be or feel or so desperately that you are, so that you give it some room to breathe, and so you can manipulate it from a more honest place.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I get it, but I do need to unpack that. Like I need some time to
Yeah.
sleep on that. Not right now. I've written my notes. I'm gonna come back to it. But that there's some magic there, and I'm grateful that we're recording this because there's a lot of people are gonna take some good out of that for sure. So the last question, how did you find your style, and this next one both come from the Facebook community. But how did you get started with traditional weddings? And if you did, how did you transition into what you're doing now?
Mm.
Did you start with shooting traditional weddings?
Yeah, I think it was like, it must have been maybe like 2, 3, maybe 4 weddings that I think you might categorize as traditional
Okay.
at first. And so I shot those first, and then with like, I don't know, like a stroke of fortune, right after that, I ended up shooting weddings in Hawaii, in England, Long Island, New York, a few other places that were very disparate from one another. And early on, those were with acquaintances or friends or just kind of like happenstance. So and all of that sort of happened quick. So there was like doing traditional weddings first, and then all of this stuff just kind of happened. And it's really difficult for me to like think back and totally unpack it and be like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
So when people ask me this a lot, they're like, how do you make that transition? I think it's 2 things. My experience is really different than the way that it would happen today.
For sure.
So if I were just now entering now, I would have to give myself much different advice than I would give myself advice when I first started, just because of the way things are, and things are super different today. And I think the methods by which you can gain traction are like light years in another place, just because of how connected everybody is right now. But
they're
yeah,
both better and worse, right? Like it's
yeah,
so much easier to connect, but there's also so many more people talking.
totally. Yeah. And it's just like this giant ocean of stuff. And the visibility is so high, and the ebb and flow is so fast. So
Yeah, for sure.
you have to be way more nimble or something. I don't know. It just feels super
More
different.
nimble or something. Well,
Yeah.
the takeaway that I'm hearing from that is something that we have talked about in the past, is the obvious statement of you need to be shooting what you want to be shooting, right? Like if you're taking a family trip to Hawaii, figure out there is no playbook, right? Like none of us that are sitting here who make a living off of this craft. I mean, I don't think anybody that I know followed like a guidebook, but like the dummy's guide to how to be a professional photographer and make a lot of money.
No.
But the answer is never going to be follow what Alex did. The answer is going to be like,
No.
be inspired that Alex just like found these circumstances that benefited him, and he like dug in and hustled for like a long ass time, and is now sitting where he is now. So you want to be shooting the things that you want to be seen shooting. Go find a way to make that happen. And then the other thing I'll take away from that is community. Like so many times, and this can be bemoaned. This can be talk about the privilege of having good friends in good places, but also it's just be nice. Reach out to other photographers. Try to get in the good graces of people that you like. Don't harass anybody, but like very few people have I reached out to and just said, hey, I just love your work. I just want to like have a 30-second conversation with you on Instagram. Very few people have said, fuck off. Very worst case scenario, I just never hear back. But more often than not, the people that you think are like these epics in the community are just people who want to make a living and love what they do, and they will probably talk to you. I'm not going to say you should hound your celebrity crush in the photography world, but like, reach out to people, tell them that their work is dope.
Yeah, there's like a principle that I wanted to bring into the Ramble experience when we were first theorizing it, and that was, there is this like strange like illusion of obstacle from someone who's just starting to someone who has quote unquote made it, and it creates this like this sort of philosophy of idolatry around it, which is super bizarre. But actually, when you think about it, it's the same way that people think about celebrities and other people of I guess cultural significance, notability, or whatever. But it's like I want with the ramble thing, like I wanted to like sort of try to dismantle that because I am a super weird person, and like everyone else is just like a super weird person, and I think that that's a good thing, and it sort of like
Yeah.
takes the playing field and levels it out. And this obstacle that I'm talking about is like, oh, I couldn't talk to them because they wouldn't respond or whatever. But like you said, like 9 times out of 10, when you like reach out to somebody to say something, they're probably going to respond. They're going to appreciate it. And even if they can't respond, they probably saw it. And that's a positive thing. Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't love getting a message on Facebook or on Instagram that just says, dude, your work is great. Like, I don't care how famous, how fancy you are. It feels good, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you might be busy and you might intend to respond and you might go, oh, that's so nice. What a kind thing to say. I have a very important client here who's paying me a lot of money to be here. I'll get back to that. And you don't. Like,
Yeah.
whatever.
Right.
I was listening to, and I talk about this a lot, the Pete Holmes podcast, You Made It Weird, talking with, what was it, John? Ben Schwartz. And he was talking about how he was introduced to, I don't know, some like famous rapper. I'm not going to remember who it was. It was like, doesn't even matter. But he's like, a buddy of his introduced him to this celebrity. And keep in mind, the two people that we're talking that are in this interview are both like celebrities of their own right. But this is like a, epic celebrity. He's like having a conversation with this person who's just looking him in the eyes, having a conversation, being kind. But Ben is just like in the back of his mind going, this fucker doesn't want to talk to me. Get out of this conversation quick, because he does not want to talk to you. He's way too fancy. He's way too busy. He has no interest in you. And he goes, that's not true. But my ego got ahead of me and told me that like, I'm not good enough to like have a conversation with a human being. Like we're all just human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some like tribalism in that, which is like, and I love to break things down on an anthropological level just because
100%. I'm here for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, it's really weird because I think innately there's a part of humans that wants to follow. And because of that, it's like a safety thing, you just kind of like huddle together. And when there are figureheads that appear like worthy of that, it's really hard to kind of like catch yourself and say, actually, I don't need to do that. We're not like out in the woods, like struggling for, survival right now. Like I don't need to tap into that thing in my brain and allow that to take over. But I think that's like, it does take time to be like, oh, we are actually all the same. And you have to like practice that way of thinking.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I like to think about, I constantly break human experiences down into in and out groups, which I think is something that humans are very good at. Religion does that, politics does that, and then in industry we'll do that, right? So like, you are a photographer or you are not. You use the language made it versus haven't made it yet, right? Like, I don't know, I can't tell you the day that I made it. I mean, there are still days when I'm like, oh, am I here? Did I do it? Am I good enough to do this thing? Like, I don't know that I'll ever feel like I've made it.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure it ever comes, and if it does, I think that's when circumstances in life knock you down a few pegs.
Oh, man, talk about and I've talked about this workshop a lot. Talk about workshops that are camp themed. The way that I jumped into like the broader photo world was Ben Sasso's Heck Yeah Photo Camp in Joshua Tree, and that was my first workshop. It was what taught me that. I didn't have, it was your moment of looking at those other photographers and going, oh yeah, this is incredible. I want to do that. The difference is I was like 6 years into my career thinking that I was like top shit. I'm just like, oh, I know what I'm doing. I walk into this room and like my work is like 8 years out of date. I'm doing things like way old school. My business model is a wreck compared to like just what is industry standard now. And talk about getting knocked down a peg. Like there were a handful of pegs and I was hitting all of them on the way down, just being like, oh man, I do not know what I'm doing. What are the, and people that themselves hadn't made it yet were sitting there like just being normal human beings, and I'm like, oh, I'm below all of you. This is new. Ego.
Yep. It happens to everybody.
And it should, right? Like, again, I'm gonna belabor this point. We are all just human beings. We're just human beings, None of us are super fancy unless you are like currently sipping on champagne. You are not fancy.
Yeah, the way something that maybe I'll like clean up this thought for kids at home, but basically I always like whenever I think that someone is like too fancy or too cool or too important, I just try to imagine them like trying to clumsily kiss for the first time.
Oh,
And it
that's
like
beautiful.
humanizes them. Yeah, it's just like nobody. We all just like want love and affection, and if you just think of like some really powerful, important person, and just like imagine them being clumsy about something, you're just like, oh yeah, it's all
I
the
love
same.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
Now this came into my head for no reason. Stubbing their toe. I can
Yeah,
imagine like Tom Hanks stubbing his toe, and you're like, that's no different than me being like, God, no, that hurts.
yeah, yeah, and it like puts you down for like a few hours. Yeah,
Interesting. That's fascinating.
yeah.
Well, Alex, is there anything that you want to like talk about? Is there anything you want to like plug? What I usually do here is I let the guests kind of like talk for a minute if they've got anything they want to talk about, and then I'll usually open it back up to kind of the community, go back to grid modes. We can kind of see everybody and see if anybody has any questions. But for first, is there anything you want to talk about?
No, I don't think so. I'm just glad that this is happening. I think this is a
For
super
sure.
cool thing, and I want more of this sort of thing to go on.
Hell yeah.
I like that one of the side effects of the isolation is I think it's kind of brought attention to people's need to be together. Whether or not you are introverted or extroverted, I think um, there's like gain to be had in that.
Yeah.
And I think when you can be complacent when there's no pandemic going on, it's harder to recognize that sometimes. But I'm glad that it's happening.
For sure. I agree. I say this every single time. I will check my language and say, I understand that people are in pain because of this. People are hurting. People are losing family
Of
members.
course, yeah,
But at the same time, I want to, as a community, come out of this positive. I want to come out of this more creative, more limber, more connected, more kind of like in love with the thing that we do, and not
hmm
be sitting here like stressing and
right,
feeling terrible.
right,
Um, Obviously, if you have that luxury, we're all sitting here right now listening to this and being part of this. We all have some sort of luxury regardless of
hmm
how much pain we're going through right now.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, dude, you're obviously you're welcome to pop into any of these. We're doing them every single Tuesday at noon, Wednesday at 3 p.m. I know after quarantine lifts, we're going to keep doing them. They're obviously not going to be every twice a week.
right,
I can't keep that up if I'm also out shooting. Um, and we one of the photo walks we had planned for 2020 was Blue Ridge, and we had you pegged to come hang out with us. But we're gonna get back out there. I've got too much love for that area to not come out your way.
oh, totally, yeah. Just you say the word and I'm there.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna go back to grid. I'm gonna not. I mean, you're welcome to unmute yourself. Anybody's welcome to jump in and just kind of chat if you got any questions. Hannah, I know you got something burning in there.
I'm just wondering, so your Instagram feed is beautiful. It's absolutely amazing. I've actually followed it on my personal account for like forever, and I just recently followed it on my photo account. But it's like served as a huge inspiration for me. And looking through your photos, I'm wondering like, do you have a current favorite? Because people ask me like, what's your favorite photo you've ever taken all the time, and it's so hard to like convey that I don't have a favorite, but like every so often I'll like have a favorite. So I'm just wondering if you have a favorite, and if there's a story behind it, I'd love to know.
Yeah. So I can really relate with that, like not having a favorite or having a hard time choosing. It's like your photos are your children, you
Yeah.
know, and like it's like how do I choose a favorite kid? But deep down, you know, there's like probably a favorite kid.
Yeah.
But like yeah. So but yeah, I think maybe like technically speaking, like if I think about my photos and I think about maybe the approach that I took and the constraints that I had and whatever limitations were at play there, as a single photo or maybe like a tiny little photo set is probably the working with the solar eclipse in Chile. And it was he pulled it up earlier. It
I'm
was
trying to grab it right now. Do you have
yeah
do you have a blog post up for it?
No, I do not. It does exist somewhere in like an end of year roundup for I think last year. But
It wasn't the things I
yeah,
saw for 2019, is it?
it probably was. Yeah,
That's your current like link in bio, so I can just grab that.
yeah, probably. But yeah, it would be that because well, I guess the story behind it is I was in Chile for fun. I was on the coast in a little city called La Serena, and it was beautiful. And I think the eclipse lasted maybe, yeah, there it is. Lasted maybe like 2 minutes. So I had 2 minutes to make this happen. So what the photo that you're seeing there is, it's actually a composite. But it is taken from the same view during the same 2 minute. So I shot it in two different exposures. The reason I had to do that is because I actually had to shoot the eclipse happening with a solar filter over the lens. And
Oh
then I
yeah,
had
totally.
to take, and then I had to briefly take it off with the hands there so that I could even remotely get them in the exposure. And then I took the two images and put them together. So they were taken very close to one another, but it is two images. So from like a I had fun making this standpoint, that one definitely is at the top. Hence why it's at the top of the post there.
For sure.
But yeah, great question though.
Hamley, ask a question. I know you got questions.
I have another one.
Yeah, go ahead, Anna.
So I also want to know, like, what's inspiring you right at this moment? Like, is there anything? Because, like, I have a lot of things that inspire me, like, in my photography that aren't other photographers and that aren't photography, kind of like how we were talking earlier about, like, fine art backgrounds and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, like, is there, like, a song that's inspiring you right now? Is there another photographer that you're really inspired by? Like, what's, like, inspiring you during quarantine?
Yeah. Great. That's an awesome question too.
It's such a good question.
Yeah, it is. So actually, yes, I am currently super inspired right now by movies. My girlfriend and my girlfriend is Alexa, and I know that we have the same name. So she's here as well. We have been watching movies that are cinematically renowned. So we have like a list in just like in like a notes app of just movies that are known for being captivatingly good looking. So there's a lot that's on that list, and we're trying to like make our way through it. So movies, big time. We'll like watch a movie and just like sit and watch and just like see like these frames happening on the screen and just like pause it, looking at it. And just like observe it and be like, this is a photograph, like an image still. And that's how DPs work. So
Hannah just asked the question that I was going to ask, which was, we need that list, Alex.
Movie list.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. There's some that I need to add to it, but I'll take it. I think once I'm done adding stuff to it, it'd be like 10, 20 movies long, which is
cool. I've got it in my notes. I'll bug you about it.
Okay, sweet.
Don't worry about remembering. I'll remember.
Yeah, I will say that like there is one movie that like has been blowing my mind recently that I've been thinking about, and that is Blade Runner 2049.
It's such a beautiful film.
It is, yeah.
So beautiful.
Yep, amazing.
Say the name again.
Blade Runner 2049 with Ryan Gosling.
So Blade Runner was from the 80s. It's like a cyberpunk futuristic. Right. And they did a not a remake. They did another one.
It's a sequel.
A couple years
ago.
Who's
about
the
like
primary actor?
Ryan Gosling.
Oh, you already said that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't worry, Emily.
I saw that in the 80s. I'm serious. When I was a kid.
They both are great. Like the Harrison Ford original still stands up. Like it's still great.
Okay, because that's okay. Yeah.
And if you haven't read the book, Dreams of Electric Sheep. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Is an incredible film, and it goes in deeper on what is humanity. Because the whole concept of the films is about androids and replicants, so like almost humans, and what it means to be human. If you can create a perfect human out of electric components, would that make them a human being? Fascinating concept.
Yeah.
Is that Orson Scott Card? I can't remember.
Oh, I don't know, but I am reading. We're like Alex and I are reading Ender's Game together. So.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Have you read it before?
No.
Oh,
I've been told by
ooh,
multiple people to read it, and I just avoided it for so long. And now,
it's so good. I that's one of those books that I wish I could read again for the first time.
yeah, I'm having a great time with it. It's good.
Yep. Oh man, tell
So
me when you're
I have a
done.
question, Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't plan this, but you might be the right person to ask. Chad and I, my husband and I, we've built up our business, and we're trying to keep a healthy balance of family, Airbnb rentals, life in the mountains, editing, all that. And so our goal is always long-term business, not short-term burnout. And so Chad was saying this year, let's cap it at 20. Last year we shot 27 weddings. And so we booked to 20 way quicker than we anticipated. And then I started giving our weddings, our overflow, whatever it was, whether it was just a little elopement, which we rarely have any. That was one of my questions. I don't know if it got covered. I stepped away for a minute, but I think, do you shoot a lot of elopements?
I do, yes.
Okay. We don't shoot a lot of elopements. A lot of our days are just long and, full weddings. And so we started giving some of our dream weddings away, Indian weddings, all this stuff, because we were full. And this was right before, we were giving weddings up into like maybe right before the shutdown. And then, of course, the shutdown happens, and then you're like, everything's canceling, everything's moving, every week looks different than the week before. People are not going to write that last check because they've decided to screw it all and not have a wedding, basically. Yeah. And so I've been trying to revisit, is it a good idea so it's kind of a bunch of questions. Is it a good idea, or do you practice the same thing where you kind of cap your potential? I don't know if productivity is the right word. Make a limit to how much you're going to do, to kind of protect yourself mentally, physically, everything. And then if you do that, do you give it away? And what's your process in that?
Yeah. So to answer that question, that's it's probably been like a few years since I've shot so many weddings that I needed to do that for my own productivity's sake. But there have been some years where it was too much. So I have referred weddings. I do refer them out either if I just can't do it or for whatever reason. And I just have like a list of people that I try to I try to do service to the couple who's asking by referring to someone who might be similar to what I do. So like that's sort of that's how I do it when I have to do it. So as far as that goes, I do it, but I don't do it like a ton. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. What do you feel like would be a good cap for you? I know that's different, I guess, for everyone's load. So it's not just like a
totally. Yeah. So I will say that like the situation that I am in is a little bit different, I think, than most people who shoot full time. So like I shoot at like weddings and elopements, and then I also work as a designer for like software and app UI. So on my personal end, I have like diversified my income where the amount of effort that I put into those two things is kind of like split on purpose so that they hit a certain amount, and then I'm not pouring so much into them that I'm like overdoing it. So that's my personal situation, and like I'm super thankful and grateful, especially like right now. A lot of people are in much different situations than that, and it like the struggle is more pronounced when times are like this. So that's I'm not sure I'm like a perfect representative of that, but as far as like what my level would be, like the cap per year, if I was just doing only weddings, it would probably be around 20. Like I would say that that's as much as I would want to shoot, especially if they were larger weddings. I could foresee shooting more than that if they were really tiny itsy bitsy things, and especially if they were local. So it's when if you got to travel, you know, a few hours or more away from home and shoot, you know, 25 to 30. That's like half of your weekends in the year.
Right.
So it can get pretty crazy, as you obviously know. But yeah, I'm kind of with you on the 20 number.
Yeah. Okay.
So this,
And
Alex, real quick, Emma, I just wrote
Yeah.
down something really nice
Yeah.
that I wrote. Split down your income into multiple streams and only pour yourself into each stream as much as you can so you do not burn out on each one, which I think is just a really well, I like it. So
yeah, I like
go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, and I appreciate my time with my children, and we homeschool all three of them. And so it does, like, what an outlet there. And I remember,
Yeah.
Michael, when you said a couple weeks ago in one of the meetings, you said, "Who's been shooting?" And everyone was like, "Oh no, I haven't been shooting." And I remember thinking, I don't feel bad at all. Like, we have like wrapped up some major subjects and started some others and all this stuff. I'm like, I'm so artistic right now, I can't handle it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I hadn't picked up a camera, you know, it wasn't coming through film or anything. I remember being one of those people thinking, oh my gosh, I wish someone would give me their overflow.
Yeah.
Is it like, do you work with, or when you were starting, were you ever an overflow person?
Like,
I
was
mean,
someone giving me their work?
we just give the work.
Mm-hmm.
And then I always follow up with a client, because I've already talked to the client, and I say, you know, did you find who you wanted? Are you happy with, do you need anything from me, basically?
Mm-hmm.
And make sure they're steady, ready, go, and send them on their way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the question that was I someone who was receiving weddings from someone else?
Yeah, did you ever do that?
Yeah, so I think early on when I started, there was a few people who I think were adjacent from me who are still good friends. Two of those people are Ben and Ashley Kokanowski, Rosie Red Photography.
Yeah, I know them.
Yeah, they're awesome. And they had a similar trajectory, and so there were some referrals going back and forth there because we were like trying to kind of make sense of it all at the same time.
Right.
And then I think I got to a certain point there because I think my path it looked a little different than maybe a lot of others, but like at a certain point I got to a point where I was like, oh, I can refer back to people, and I can even refer, I hate to use this word, but like refer down. So people who are, I don't like using the word down, but like basically people who are just starting, just kind of like feeding them things, as long as it matches what a client would expect and I felt good about it, then that's right. You know, I would do that.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, it wasn't even, I just wanted you to talk about it. It wasn't even, I appreciate you.
It's good. Yeah. Thanks. No, I'm happy to, yeah, it's good. It's also just good to hear other people like talking about the same experiences, because it's easy to get into a silo. So totally get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were talking, who was I talking with us about yesterday? Oh, actually, Am Randall, who did the photo club branding. She's redoing our Allen photography branding right now. That's her t-shirt. We were talking about how opaque some of these industries can be, and how there is a workflow for that, right? There is an industry standard of like, hey, I can't take this. Can you, do you have this date open? I respect your work enough that I think like someone coming through my brand is not going to be disappointed if I send them off to you. But in a lot of ways, people don't talk about that. And I think that a lot of the big names got got where they are, because I describe it as coming up at the same time. So you and Rosie Red kind of like came up at the same time, and you guys, stand-up comedians talk about this all the time. There's like these like classes, generations of people coming up at the same time. And I think that there are some people who are wildly successful specifically because they met the right people at the right time, and they got into those circles. And I've got the people that I refer out to, and everybody who gets more work than they can take tends to do that. And I think it's interesting. I like breaking down that opaqueness. I like punching through that and being like, yeah, just like find people you like, share work with them. If you get, say you only get one booking for the year, but you get 2 bookings for the same day and you can't take that second one, give it off to somebody. I don't care if it's the second wedding you've got inquired for the whole year. Like, give it off. Like, be kind and find somebody that you think can do that. It's good to your client, your potential client. I have had clients that I couldn't handle, most likely probably portrait clients, that I couldn't take their work. We were booked for the season. I sent them off to somebody that I liked, and they came back and did like family pictures or something with me, because they're like, oh, that was the one that got away. So you might still get work from it. What's that?
It's nice to hand off family too. Like, family is asking you to shoot their wedding. That's a good handoff, really. We just did that.
Yeah.
Who's Madison again, Alex?
Oh, Madison's a friend of mine. She's actually Ben, who I kind of co-ran Ramble with. Madison is Ben's wife, and so they're using her computer, and they're both hanging in right now.
And do you shoot?
Can you guys hear us?
Yeah, we got you. We're here.
Okay, cool. You had a question, Emily, for them?
Do you guys? I'm pointing. I know it's hard not to talk to the grid. Do you guys shoot together?
Who is you?
Yeah.
Ben and Madison and Alex.
Oh, gotcha.
Oh, yeah. You guys answer that.
Oh, yeah. Well, so we shoot together all the time when we're just kind of messing around and having fun. And yeah, there's hardly a time we don't have cameras with us. And as Alex said before, it's a lot of film recently.
Yeah.
But there have been a couple times that we've been really fortunate enough to tag along with Alex on like weddings and elopements and things. So super fortunate there, really thankful for those opportunities. And it is, it's as fun as it looks. It really is. It's a blast.
Ben, are you guys like a second shooter and Alex is like the main communicator with the client?
In those scenarios, yes.
Okay.
They also shoot themselves. They're awesome on, like, they have their own thing going. It's called the Octas, and they're super great. And
yeah,
I'd
love to see a link for that.
Yeah, they can probably drop the link in there.
Yeah, I'll throw it in there.
Okay,
thank you, guys.
Cool. Yeah. So, yeah, they're great. Then they live like 20 minutes away from me, so it's like I see them all the time.
Right.
Oh, I can't spell.
So.
Oh my God, I cannot spell. Well, we all should make an excuse to get to North Carolina as soon as possible and hang out for fun, and we'll just shoot film. You guys, you have that film ramble, right?
Oh yeah, so we started doing like a film meetup, and obviously we can't do that in these circumstances. Yeah, we just like got a bunch of film cameras together and wanted to get people together for specifically walking around in a different place. What was it, once a month, to do sort of a similar thing. Yeah,
I have a handful of them.
Oh yeah. Oh man, I want that. It's a Mamiya. Oh man, I want that.
I got this for $30 recently.
Yeah. The Yashica. Yeah. Yep. This is my baby. This is my Leica M3. I'll show this off to
what is it? I can't see it.
The chain. It's a Leica M3.
This is my camera that looks like a Leica, but it isn't.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, that's the Fuji. Which one is that?
The X100F.
Oh yeah, that thing is great. I used to have the X100T, I think is what I had.
I had that, and I rented that one, really, really wanting a rangefinder. Basically wanted a Leica, but I wanted digital, and I didn't want the digital Leicas, or the price.
Yep.
And I did not love the T.
Yeah.
Yeah. The F really pushed it forward, and the V just came out, and I'm really tempted at it.
Ooh. Mm.
Oh, there's some. Yeah, the V's nice.
Mhm.
Christian, are you gonna buy it?
Nope. Quarantine's been expensive enough for me.
For sure.
I gotta buy a
I've
new
noticed-
laptop soon.
Oh yeah, I kind of think I need to also. I got a 2010 that I've been holding on to because I did not like the anything other than the 2019 MacBook Pros. Everything
Yeah.
before that was trash. It was keyboards and
Did you put a solid state drive in that yet? I did that for my wife's.
Mine's this is the first one that had the the second one that had the solid state drive. So it's still a tank. I mean, it's a great computer. I don't have any problems with it. But when I get on these calls, recording and video chatting, I shut Photoshop down. I shut Lightroom down. Like,
Yeah.
I'm cautious on it.
Yeah, once you put the 16 gig of RAM in there upgraded in the solid state, that's pretty much all you can do.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we should probably let everybody get going. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Alex, for being here.
No, thank you.
I'm gonna put this is gonna go up on YouTube. I will put. I actually created a page on the Photo Club. It's I don't need to list off the URL to you. It's too long. But I made a quarantine calls drop down on the homepage or on the menu system, and so there's going to be a page for each one of these, and then that's where I'm going to be putting the show notes from now on to trick you all to go into the website to get our traffic up. And then brainstorm request for everybody. Not yet, but I do think it will come a time when I want to rename these because quarantine calls is fun for now, but I want to make them less negative. And especially once we get out of quarantine, harking back to the quarantine times doesn't make any sense. If you got any dope names for it, I'm all ears. All right, guys.
All right,
See you
thanks. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.